He thought humiliating his employees on camera would be entertaining. But when the janitor stepped forward, this billionaire's twisted game backfired in the most spectacular way possible. Richard Blackstone was everything you'd expect from a tech billionaire: cold, calculating, and completely disconnected from reality. At 6'2" with silver hair and designer suits that cost more than most people's yearly salary, he ruled Blackstone Industries like a king surveying his kingdom. His corner office on the 47th floor overlooked the city, but he rarely looked down at the people who actually made his empire run. In the basement of that same gleaming tower worked Miguel Santos, a 52-year-old janitor who had been quietly cleaning those marble floors for 8 years. Short and stocky with weathered hands and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, Miguel was invisible to most executives. He spoke softly, kept his head down, and sent every paycheck home to his family in Honduras. While others saw him as just a cleaning guy, Miguel observed everything. He understood people, business, and human nature in ways that Harvard MBAs never could. The company had been struggling lately. Stock prices were dropping, investors were getting nervous, and Blackstone needed a PR win. But instead of focusing on innovation or employee satisfaction, his narcissistic mind hatched a different plan, one that would feed his ego while supposedly cutting costs. The announcement came on a rainy Tuesday morning. All 200 employees were summoned to the main conference hall, where cameras had been set up and production crews bustled around with professional lighting equipment. Blackstone stood at the podium, his trademark smirk playing across his lips as he prepared to unveil his masterstroke. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice echoing through the room, "in the spirit of innovation and entertainment, I'm launching Survival of the Fittest, a reality show where you are the stars. Over the next week, you'll compete in challenges designed to test your worth to this company. The winner gets a promotion and a $100,000 bonus. Everyone else..." He paused dramatically. "Well, let's just say we're downsizing by 75%. The room erupted in shocked murmurs and nervous laughter. People looked around frantically, already calculating their chances and eyeing their colleagues as competition. Blackstone raised his hand for silence. "Now, I know what you're thinking. This is just for executives and department heads, right? Wrong." His eyes gleamed with malicious pleasure. "Everyone participates. Accountants, secretaries, security guards, even janitors. After all, if you can't prove your value in front of millions of viewers, do you really deserve to work here?" Miguel felt every eye in the room briefly glance his way before looking away in embarrassment. He simply adjusted his glasses and remained silent, while around him, panic began to set in. What followed was a week of carefully orchestrated humiliation, disguised as competition. Blackstone had designed challenges that seemed to favor the educated elite. Complex presentations, high-pressure negotiations, technical problem-solving under studio lights. The cameras captured every stumble, every nervous breakdown, every desperate attempt to stay relevant. Marketing executives trash-talked each other during team challenges, while accountants desperately tried to prove their creativity in brainstorming sessions. The HR director threw her own team under the bus to save herself, and department heads who had worked together for years suddenly became bitter enemies. Blackstone watched it all from his elevated judge's table, occasionally making cutting remarks that the editors would later highlight for maximum drama. "Jennifer, your presentation was about as inspiring as watching paint dry," he'd say with a chuckle. "And Marcus, I've seen more leadership from a wet paper bag." Meanwhile, Miguel continued his normal routine. He arrived early, cleaned thoroughly, and quietly observed the chaos unfolding around him. During breaks, he was the one who brought water to stressed contestants, cleaned up their messes, and offered quiet words of encouragement. Most barely acknowledged his kindness. They were too focused on their own survival. The cameras occasionally caught him in the background, usually when someone was having an emotional breakdown in the bathroom or crying in a supply closet. The producers initially planned to edit him out, but something about his steady presence amid the chaos made for interesting contrast. By day 5, the competition had been whittled down to 10 finalists. The building's atmosphere was toxic, friendships destroyed, trust shattered, and morale at an all-time low. Blackstone was loving every minute of it, already planning the sequel series. That's when Miguel did something unexpected. As the final challenge was being announced, a high-stakes business proposal presentation. He quietly stepped forward. "Mr. Blackstone," he said, his accented English carrying clearly through the suddenly silent room, "I would like to participate in the final challenge." Blackstone's eyebrows shot up in amusement. "Miguel, isn't it? The janitor?" He turned to the cameras with a theatrical shrug. "Well, this should be entertaining. Ladies and gentlemen, our cleaning man thinks he can play with the big boys." The other contestants exchanged glances. Some smirked. Others looked uncomfortable with the obvious setup for public humiliation. Miguel simply nodded respectfully and took his place among the finalists. "I hope you prepared something special," Blackstone said with mock seriousness. "After all, you're up against Harvard MBAs and seasoned executives. What could a janitor possibly know about running a business?" Miguel's response was quiet but firm. "With respect, sir, I know this business better than anyone else in this room." When Miguel's turn came, he didn't use flashy PowerPoint presentations or corporate buzzwords. Instead, he walked to the center of the room and began to speak from the heart. "For 8 years, I have cleaned every floor, every office, every corner of this building. I have seen what really happens when the cameras are off and the meetings end. I have watched brilliant employees quit because they felt undervalued. I have cleaned up after executives who wasted millions on projects that anyone on the ground floor could have told them would fail." He paused, looking directly at Blackstone before continuing. "Mr. Blackstone, you want to cut 75% of the workforce to save money, but I know something you don't. Last month, the Martinez account, worth $12 million annually, almost walked away because Sarah in customer service couldn't get approval to waive a $50 processing fee. I was cleaning the conference room when she called her supervisor in tears, begging for authority to save the client." The room was dead silent now. Even the camera operators had stopped moving. "You want to fire the maintenance team to save costs, but you know that James and Facilities prevented a server room meltdown last winter that would have cost us millions in downtime? He wasn't authorized to make that repair, but he did it anyway because he cares about this company." Miguel's voice grew stronger as he continued. 8 years of observation flowing out like water from a broken dam. The room erupted in applause that went on for several minutes. Even some of the camera crew were clapping. Blackstone sat frozen at his judge's table, his face cycling through confusion, anger, and something that might have been shame. But the real twist came 3 hours later, when the raw footage accidentally leaked online before the show could be edited and sanitized. Miguel's speech went viral within hours, racking up millions of views and making headlines across major news networks. Hashtag Janitor Justice and hashtag Miguel Santos began trending worldwide. By the next morning, Blackstone Industries' stock price had actually risen 15%, driven by investor confidence in the company's authentic leadership and commitment to all employees. The board of directors, seeing an opportunity, immediately announced that the reality show was canceled and that Miguel Santos was being promoted to Director of Employee Relations with a substantial salary increase. Blackstone himself faced a very different kind of reality show, emergency board meetings, PR disasters, and eventually a forced resignation. The man who had tried to eliminate 75% of his workforce found himself in the 100% that got cut. Miguel's first act in his new position was to implement exactly what he had proposed: training programs, recognition initiatives, and a complete restructuring of how the company valued its employees. Within 6 months, Blackstone Industries had become one of the most sought-after places to work in the city. Never underestimate the quiet ones who see everything. Sometimes the person mopping the floors knows more about building an empire than the one sitting on the throne. True leadership doesn't come from a corner office. It comes from understanding that every person has value, and every voice deserves to be heard. The janitor who was supposed to be eliminated became the foundation for something much stronger. And somewhere in his luxury penthouse, a former billionaire learned that the hardest reality show of all is the one where you have to face the truth about yourself. If you like that story, please subscribe to receive more stories like that. Thank you, and until next time.